This is the Talks with Sri Ramana Maharshi Satsang, a time to listen, reflect, and deeply meditate. Know yourself and be always free and at peace. Welcome. I'm Richard Clarke, hosting this satsang. I'm reviewing and commenting on the dialogues recorded in the book Talks with Sri Ramana Maharshi. Now I'll give some excerpts from Talk 25. On a former occasion, B.V. Natarajan Swami, Narasimha Swami, author of Self-Realization, asks, "Who am I? How is it to be found?" Ramana responded, "Ask yourself the question. The body and its functions are not I. Going deeper, the mind and its functions are not I." The next step takes us to the question, wherefrom do these thoughts arise? The thoughts are spontaneous, superficial, or analytical. They operate in intellect. Then who is aware of them? The existence of thought, their clear conceptions, and their operations become evident to the individual. The analysis leads to the conclusion that the individuality of the person is operative as the perceiver of the existence of thoughts and of their sequence. This individuality, or as people say, I, intellect, is only the sheath of I and not the I itself. Inquiring further, the questions arise, who is this I? Wherefrom does it come? I was not aware in sleep. Simultaneously with the rise, sleep changes to dreams or wakefulness, but I'm not concerned with dream just now. Who am I now in the wakeful state? If I originated from sleep, then the I was covered up with ignorance. Such an ignorant I cannot be what the scriptures say or the wise ones affirm. I am beyond even sleep. I must be now and here and what I was all along in sleep and dreams also, without the qualities of such states. I must therefore be the unqualified substratum underlying these three states. I is, in brief, beyond the five she's. Next, the residuum left over after discarding all that is not self is the self, Sat Chit Ananda. Ramana first tells the questioner, rather than asking another, he should look within himself. This is pretty radical, I think, for a spiritual teacher to say, don't ask me, find out within yourself. Ramana then deals with a basic approach to discrimination in the talk about the five she's. The basic idea here is that we are really covered by sheaths. Our deepest identity is covered by layers or of misidentification. These layers are first the body, including senses and the organs of action, such as hands, feet, mouth, and speech. The next sheath is the energy that enlivens the body, the breath and the heartbeat. The next sheath is the mind, which is known by its various thoughts. Then comes the intellect, which organizes thoughts into your view of yourself and the world apparently around you. This sheath is the home of the ego I. The fifth sheath is the peace found in sleep and deep meditation. In this state, the mind is quiet, but when aroused from sleep or meditation, then it appears again as the ego I and all the ideas of the world. All of these layers, these sheaths, are temporary. They come and go, and all are known, and you are the knower. The basis of discrimination is to separate out the non-self from the self. You discover that anything that is temporary is not you. Rather, you are the consciousness which knows and which is always there as the base or substratum of all your experiences. He says the body and its functions are not I. Why not? He doesn't say why in this talk, but two ways to see this are: first, notice that the body changes and is temporary. Do you, your deepest identity, change? And also, the body is known. Who is the knower? Who knows the body? He skips the sheath of life energy. With this sheath, you can discriminate the same way as with the body. Is the life force constant, or does it change, rise and fall? Is the life force known? Who is the knower? Ramana then takes on the mind and intellect with the question, wherefrom do these thoughts arise? He tells us that thoughts are spontaneous and operate in the intellect. Then he asks, then, who is aware of them? He tells us that what seems to be the individual is the perceiver of thought. And then he tells us the intellect, which he calls here the sheath of I, seems to know these thoughts. But then he tells us this individuality is the ego, or as people say, I. The intellect is only the sheath of I and not the I itself. Again, who knows the intellect? Is the intellect constant and changeless? Then he tells us that I is, in brief, beyond the five sheaths. Next, the residuum left over after discarded all that is not self is the self, Sat Chit Ananda. In other words, The real I is changeless and always the knower, never the known. Everything that is the not self can be dismissed. Who you are can't be dismissed. It is always there within yourself. Then he tells us that the self, the underlying essence, is akin to the subject and not the object. And the practice needed for self-realization is inquiring into the drik, the seer or knower, until all the drishya, the seen, everything that is known, disappears. It doesn't really disappear, but is swallowed up in the drik, the seer. Ramana then says, I is in brief beyond the five sheaths. Next, the residuum left over after discarding all that is not self is the self, Sat Chit Ananda. In other words, when you have discriminated and dismissed all these ideas that make up the ego I, then all that remains is the self. Finding the self is not a matter of gaining or attaining anything. It's a matter of eliminating from your sense of identity what is not true. Then the self can stand on its own, unobscured. Now we'll listen to my teacher Nome with a dialogue on discrimination and the body.
Following the instruction to discriminate what's real, I started by saying, how am I going to do this? What has capacity to determine what's real? Certainly the unreal couldn't, because it's just not there to determine anything. So the definition, or one of the characteristics of something that's real, is that it's always, whatever it is, it's always that. It doesn't vary from that. And it can't be an objective kind of thing. So the only way I know to kind of go at it is I got to find out. It's more a who than a what. Because if it's a what, it's going to be something. It's got to be objective. If it's a what. So it seems like determining reality has its basis in knowing who I am. And as I inquire who I am, there's a tendency to look for who I am, like a thing. But then that's not inquiring. So. I think the thing that's kind of got my attention today is I've kind of got a cold or something, and I don't get sick very often. So it kind of has a novelty to have the body sort of, aching and sort of spacey. And it's kind of an interesting thing to actually play around with a little bit. because it's like I normally don't. I mean, the body just sort of works and behaves itself. It's not a problem. But today it's a problem. So I'm looking at these sensations. Are they real? Even though they may be very uncomfortable, throat is really sore, have a bad headache, all that kind of stuff. Well, by the definition that it's got to be constant, thank goodness it's not real. Because it wasn't there a couple of days ago.
So you're not this thing called the body.
No.
And you're not cooped up in it.
It seems like there's something cooped up in it.
Are you that something?
I don't think so. Because I can't find where that something is. There's like a vague notion. It's not like, I'm in here and I'm suffering. It's not at all like that. It's more...
What's in the body is more of the body. And the whole of it is said to be pervaded by prana. But you're not that.
No, because I know I'm observing it, and I'm not it.
So you're not the body, and you're not in the body. And all the so-called experience based on being a body, being in the body, having certain bodily attributes, all that experience is entirely illusory. And all the conceptions or mental modes based on the dependability of the body, due to long-standing habit, long-standing in the relative sense of the body's age, not in terms of ages of time, due to the long-standing habit or long-standing being accustomed to a particular mode of the body, one thinks of it as being dependable, and the sensations thereof are thought to be real. But it's actually so fragile and changes so easily. And those so-called experiences through the senses are not real at all.
I ask myself, why does it matter to me at all, whatever the state the body is in? I mean, why is that even of an interest to me? And it is, well, no, it's not of that much interest. It's more like a mild interest, like keeping the house clean or something. It has
some utilitarian purpose.
But if I ask, well, who does it matter to? It would only matter to me if I thought that that's who I was those sensations. So then the obvious question is then, well, what does matter to me? What's important to me? And it's not trying to figure out what's going on with this body. I don't seem to have any control over it other than just someone who can do some caretaking or maintenance. But beyond that, there's not a whole lot of. So if what matters to me is being happy, it's a sure bet not to look in the body.
It's not dependable.
No.
And even when things are going well with it, it's not your source of happiness.
No. At best, it's pleasant. Or pleasure.
For dependable happiness, it's best to rely on something that is perpetually existent. That means something without birth and death. It is best to rely on something that does not appear or disappear. And that means something that is utterly non-objective. And it is best to rely on something that is always with you. And that means you yourself.
So I started to ask, how do I know I'm with myself? Or how do I How does this come about that I always know?
You couldn't raise the question if it were not so.
No, it's just the way it is. I can't even get apart from myself to ask myself the question. If I'm really asking myself the question from myself, it's really kind of a silly question.
It's at best redundant.
It will only affirm what's...
That's already obvious.
Yeah.
So self-realization or liberation is always based on the self-existent, on the ever-existent. And it is for this reason that Sri Bhagavan said, what is not eternal is not worth seeking.
Yeah, it would only be done out of ignorance to think. So if I examine my sense of who I am, like trying to find any quality to it, like a beginning or an end, so that's like temporal qualities, or does it have any connection to, or it's even better, it's just ask who's looking. That's more direct.
And now we'll have a little meditation, self-inquiry. Quiet yourself and take a long breath in. Feel your breath. A long exhale. And now notice that you exist and you know that you exist. And now inquire, investigate within yourself. Am I a body? Am I the mind? Who knows this body? Who knows this mind? Who knows the ego I that seems to rise in this mind and this body? Who am I? What is the nature of my existence? Dismiss everything that comes and goes. what remains. All right. And we'll close with a chant. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om. Peace, peace, peace. All right. Any questions or comments? Or you're muted, Evelyn. You're muted and we can't.
I got the, now you can hear me?
Now we can hear you.
I got to thinking about the body, especially when it's sick,
Uh-huh.
and how there's no controlling that. It's just doing its
Right.
thing, you know. But our language, you know, we talk, I am sick and my body is this, or I have pain. And if you were to go around in society saying the body has pain, people would be looking at you oddly. But
Uh-huh.
it just shows how deeply we've been
Right.
brainwashed into that.
Right.
And,
That's
and
part of the problem.
yeah, and you just get a different view or respect or something when the body is, the temperature is going up or it's going down or it aches or it's wheezing or sneezing. It's doing its little ballet all by itself.
That's right. The guy who in the dialogue, Jim, was talking about just exactly
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's not alone.
Uh-huh. And he's a guy who has practiced long enough and deeply enough where when the body is sick, he's able to kind of witness it instead of
Yeah.
being so involved in it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I can do that somewhat, unless the thought arises like, oh, am I going to die? And then it's like, well, then what? I know intellectually, you know, but still,
Right.
we,
I wish I'd thought of that when I was sick a couple weeks ago. I didn't. I just don't even think about that in those terms. It seems like it would be helpful.
yeah, as best we can, but yeah. So I'm still kind of fond of this piece of stuff.
Yes, I understand. Like I like riding around in this body.
Yes, exactly. And since we have no memory of riding around not in a body, so of course it's a little, you think, oh gosh, what's going to happen next?
Well, it's still to
Yikes! I
me,
know.
it points out how deep is are the habits that we have to break through
Yeah,
to really do this spiritual practice. And for most people, they don't even identify this as habits. They think this is who they are.
yeah.
Talk
Mhm.
about limiting ideas.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, those words never get old. Ramanas and
No,
Nome, they
no.
are always
Yes,
fresh in
yes.
me. Mhm.
Anyway, it was very good to see you. And
Yeah, and you brothers.
and we'll see you Friday for some Song of Ribu and meditation. That
That'd be lovely.
very
All
good.
right. Take
Na-
good care of yourselves.
Okay,
You too.
namaste.
I am.
Namaste.
Namaste.